Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Bruce Sports Central. Today, we're going to be going over my Week 17 NFL Power Rankings. So, going over last week's rankings and what those teams did in Week 16. Last week at number 10, I had the Texans. They lost to the Chiefs 27-19. Ninth was the Broncos. They lost to the Chargers 34-27. Eighth, I had the Ravens. They beat the Steelers 34-17. Seventh was the Steelers. They lost to the Ravens 34-17. Sixth was the Packers. They destroyed the Saints 34-0. Fifth was the Vikings. They defeated the Seahawks 27-24. Fourth was the Chiefs. They beat the Texans 27-19. Third, I had the Lions. They easily beat the Bears 34-17. Two was the Bills. They beat the Patriots 24-21. And one was the Eagles, who lost to the Commanders 36-33. But getting into this week's rankings, beginning things at number 10, I've got the Chargers. The Chargers enter at number 10 after a 34-27 win over the Broncos on Thursday Night Football. And this was a big win for the Chargers. They're now in a great spot for a potential playoff spot, as they're sitting in the 6th seed and all they have to do is win one more game. But this is also a good win for the Chargers because it's a bounce back win after they were demolished by the Buccaneers last week. But the Chargers offense, they played well against tough Broncos defense. Justin Herbert threw for 284 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception, and Gus Edwards had 2 rushing touchdowns. Then defensively, the Chargers weren't the greatest, but they were good in the second half, holding the Broncos to just 6 points. And after a big win over the Broncos, the Chargers are now in a great spot to make the playoffs, and I have them at number 10. Ninth, I have the Commanders. The Commanders enter my top 10 at number 9 after a 36-33 win over the Eagles in a wild game. The Commanders turned the ball over 5 times in this game and trailed 27-14 entering the fourth quarter, yet they still won. The Commanders scored 22 fourth quarter points to get the win and snapped the Eagles' 10-game winning streak. Jayden Daniels was great in this game with 258 yards and 5 touchdowns, although he did have 2 interceptions. And Daniels also had 81 yards on the ground. Then the Commanders' defense wasn't great, allowing 33 points and 211 rushing yards, but the Commanders' defense actually played really well in the second half, especially against the run and Saquon Barkley, as they allowed Barkley to have just 16 carries for 27 yards in the second half, after he had a monster first half. But the Commanders, they're now 10-5. It's their first 10-win season since 2012, and they haven't clinched a playoff spot yet, but they're in a great position to do so, and I've got the Commanders at number 9. Eighth, I have the Steelers. So the Steelers, they fall a spot to number 8 after they lost to the Ravens 34-17. The Steelers' offense was decent. Russell Wilson threw for 217 yards and 2 touchdowns, as well as an interception. And the Steelers, they ran the ball decently well, rushing for 117 yards on 4.9 yards a carry. But it was the Steelers' defense that didn't play well, as they allowed over 400 yards and 34 points. Plus, they couldn't stop the run, as the Ravens ran for 220 yards. But the Steelers, they're now 10-5, and I have them at number 8 in my power ranking. Coming in at number 7, I've got the Ravens. So the Ravens, they moved to number 7 after they beat the Steelers, and this was a good performance for the Ravens. Their offense played really well, scoring 34 points against a great Steelers defense. Lamar Jackson threw for 207 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. Receiver Zay Flowers had a good game with 5 catches for 100 yards. And Derrick Henry was also great with 162 rushing yards. And then the Ravens defense, they played another good game, holding the Steelers to just 17 points. And the Ravens defense has actually been playing pretty well as of late, as in their last 5 games, they're allowing just 19 points per game. But the Ravens, they're now tied for first place in the AFC North at 10-5, and they actually have a chance to win the division because the Steelers, they have 2 tough games remaining against the Chiefs and Bengals, while the Ravens face the Texans and Browns. But the Ravens, their 4-game losing streak against the Steelers is snapped, and they enter my rankings at number 7. Coming in at number 6, I have the Packers. The Packers, they enter at number 6 after they destroyed the Saints 34-0. The Packers' offense was great with 34 points, and they've now scored at least 30 points in 5 straight games. The Packers ran the ball effectively, rushing for 188 yards and 3 touchdowns on 4.8 yards a carry. And Jordan Love threw for 182 yards and a score. And then defensively, the Packers, they were great. They did not allow a single point, and it was the first shutout of the NFL season. But the Packers, they held the Saints to just 193 yards, got 3 sacks, and also forced 2 turnovers. But the Packers, after a dominant win over the Saints, they have now clinched a playoff spot, and the Packers, they're at number 6. Getting into the top 5 at number 5, I've got the Vikings. So the Vikings, they enter at number 5 after they beat the Seahawks 27-24. The Vikings offense played well, Sam Darnold had another good game as he threw for 246 yards and 3 touchdowns, and Justin Jefferson was great with 10 catches for 144 yards and 2 scores. Now, the Vikings didn't run the ball that effectively, rushing for just 81 yards and 3.4 yards a carry, and the Vikings also didn't play their best game defensively, as they allowed 24 points and 361 total yards, although they did force two turnovers, including an interception to seal the game. But it wasn't the greatest win for the Vikings, but they did beat a good Seahawks team, and I've got the Vikings at number 5, but I can definitely understand the argument to have them a little bit higher. Fourth, I have the Eagles. The Eagles, they fought at number 4 after they lost to the Commanders 36-33. The Eagles' offense played pretty well, with 33 points, although they're now banged up at the quarterback position, as Jalen Hurts left the game with a concussion, and backup Kenny Pickett is dealing with a rib injury. Now, Pickett was decent in relief of Jalen Hurts, as he threw for 143 yards, a touchdown, and a pick, and A.J. Brown had a good game with 8 catches for 97 yards and a touchdown. The Eagles also ran the ball very effectively, rushing for 211 yards and 2 touchdowns on 5.4 yards a carry, although they struggled to run the ball late in the game and put the game away. Then defensively, the Eagles didn't play very well. They allowed 36 points, which is the most they've allowed so far this year. They also allowed 368 total yards. Now, they were able to force 5 turnovers, but they still weren't able to get the win. But the Eagles, they had their 10-game winning streak snapped with their loss to the Commanders. They're still in a good spot to win the NFC East, but they fought at number 4 in my power rankings. Coming in at number 3, I have the Chiefs. So the Chiefs, they entered at number 3 after they beat the Texans 27-19, and this was finally a game for the Chiefs where they didn't seem extremely lucky to get the win. But the Chiefs' offense played well. Patrick Mahomes threw for 260 yards and a touchdown, and his ankle seems fine, as he did not look bothered at all, as he ran for 33 yards and a touchdown. And the Chiefs, they ran the ball pretty effectively, rushing for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns on 4.4 yards a carry. And rookie receiver Xavier Worthy also had a pretty solid game with 7 catches for 65 yards and a score. Then defensively, the Chiefs were pretty solid, holding the Texans under 20 points and also forcing 2 turnovers. But the Chiefs, they enter at number 3. Coming in at number 2, I have the Lions. So the Lions, they enter at number 2 following their 34-17 win over the Bears. And the Lions, they got a good bounce back win after they lost to the Bills last week. As in this game, they took the lead early and they never trailed. The Lions' offense was great. Jared Goff had 336 yards and 3 touchdowns, and receiver Jameson Williams had a huge game with 5 catches for 143 yards and a touchdown. And despite not having David Montgomery, the Lions still ran the ball pretty effectively, rushing for 146 yards and a touchdown. Then defensively, the Lions were pretty good, allowing 17 points and forcing 2 turnovers, although they did allow well over 300 passing yards. But this is still a pretty good performance for a Lions defense that is extremely banged up, and I've got the Lions at number 2. And coming in at number 1, I've got the Bills. So the Bills, they move up a spot to number 1, but it's really just a result of the Eagles' loss. But the Bills, they beat the Patriots 24-21, and this wasn't the best win for the Bills. They got off to a really slow start, as they were trailing 14-0 early, but then they outscored the Patriots 24-7 the rest of the way. The Bills' offense was solid, scoring 24 points, and it was actually the first time since week 6 where they didn't score at least 30. But Josh Allen threw for 154 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. And running back James Cook had a huge game with 100 rushing yards and a touchdown on just 11 carries. And he was also the Bills' leading receiver with 3 catches for 26 yards and another touchdown. And then the Bills were good defensively, allowing 21 points and forcing 3 turnovers, with one of them being returned for a touchdown. But the Bills, despite this not being their greatest win, I do have them at number 1. Well, those are my Week 17 NFL Power Rankings. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, turn notifications. I'd do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.